Hey, Apple Biters and Appletinis, this is Les, aka Sister Slayer, here for the Bit and Apple TV in conjunction with It Came From the Radio. And we have such a busy weekend this week. I mean, right now we're up before everybody, and guess where we are? The New Jersey Comic Expo. Oh my gosh, we have so much to show you. I can't even begin to tell you. We've got some really exclusive interviews with some really amazing people, some independent artists, some that you already know, and we can't wait to show it all to you. So before we go into the door today, I just want to let you know, be prepared. I can't wait. Take care. We'll see you inside. Hey, Appletinis, this is Les, aka Sister Slayer, here at the New Jersey Comic Expo in conjunction with It Came From the Radio. And I'm here with Mr. Arthur Suydam. Mr. Suydam, this man is a legend. First of all, you've worked on things like National Lampoon, heavy metal. Give me a little bit of history about your work with heavy metal.
Yeah, Heavy Metal Magazine. Yeah, okay, so my history with Heavy Metal Magazine is back in 1971 when I came into the business, 1971 and 72. I was I'm told that I was the first American artist to bring in painted comics and introduce painted comic work to comics. When I went to DC Comics to get work, I brought in oil painted comic pages and watercolor painted comic pages. And they loved the work, but they couldn't print them because they were printing on newsprint at the time. All comics were newsprint. So what happened was there was a magazine that opened up, started by two artists in France that came over to the United States called Heavy Metal Magazine. And myself and Richard Corbin were the first two American artists working for the magazine. And I'm told that I was the guy that introduced painted work to comics. And so all the work that I took to DC to get printed in 1971. Heavy Metal bought it all on the spot, and they were able to publish it in Heavy Metal.
So you're a true artist in the fact that you actually have another background. You were a musical artist too. Give me a little bit of history about that, and then how you started getting into the comic drawings of comics and the graphics of comics.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think I'm actually in a lot of different areas of the arts. I'm actually a martial arts instructor. I used to be a dance instructor, so I had a dual career as a musician as well. Yeah, my band actually won the Grammy for Bruce Springsteen about 4 or 5 years ago. That was my group for all those Seeger Sessions albums. And so yeah, I was all my family has always been an art family. So my great uncles were all renowned painters. Two of them were Hudson River painters from the 18th century. Those were a group of about a dozen American painters that won American Fine Artist recognition for the first time worldwide. One was James Suydam and the other was Henry Suydam. And then immediately following that, there was another Suydam named E.H. Suydam, who was known as America's foremost architectural artist. Their works hang in the White House and in the Museum of New York. They have an entire division devoted just to E.H. Suydam's work. So I'm kind of the new Suydam, and I paint zombies. That's what I do. Yeah.
So speaking of zombies, one of the things that I realized is some of the material that you have here is, of course, Walking Dead, which is the hottest zombie movement going out right now. But you also do Marvel zombies. But give me a little bit of history about your work with Walking Dead.
Okay. Yeah, there was a comic book, a little-known black and white comic book, independent comic that came out in roughly 2003. So my understanding is that they pitched it in 2003 and 2004. 2005 to all the studios, and it got rejected by all the studios because they said, hey, nobody cares about zombies. And indeed, nobody did at the time. So then in actually 2006, what happened was Marvel Zombies came out, and Marvel Zombies, and then Marvel Zombies versus Army of Darkness, and then another book called Raise the Dead for Dynamite Entertainment. And those books became bestsellers of all time in trade format for those publishers. And based on that, that's actually what started the whole zombie phenomenon. And all of a sudden, in a period of like 2 years, 3 years, zombies became like the hula hoop, became the biggest thing in pop culture in the country. And then everybody started jumping on the wagon. Brad Pitt jumped on the wagon. Toyota started to put zombies in their car commercials. And then roughly by what was it, 2009, then AMC, based on the popularity of the zombie thing, that was like the hot thing in the country, they signed Walking Dead, and that's how Walking Dead got signed.
So I noticed also that there's something that's very unique about your art. When you feature it, it's not anything that looks scary or anything. It's like, you know, people have this compassionate feeling towards the zombies, or a love for zombies now. Your art, even though it's such a dark subject, doesn't look dark. There's like sunshine and clouds and everything like that. It's almost a surreal concept of such an apocalyptic time, but a time that is like peaceful and, you know, almost religious. It looks like it.
That makes sense. So what's your question?
My question, yeah, where did this come from?
Okay, well, it probably comes from two places. One, I'm classically trained, and my training is 15th and 16th century Dutch and Italian. So based on the notes from Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and Raphael, they rebuilt the school. So there was this school in New York, the New York Academy of Figurative Art, which I believe was the first classical atelier school in the United States. It was a hugely successful school. That's where I went to school. So I'm actually trained to paint religious art. But what I always loved was, I always loved comics, and I loved those horror movies, and I loved the film noir movies. So that's the kind of work that I wanted to do. But I wanted to have the skill level of the great illustrators, drawers, painters, engravers of from the Renaissance as well. So my strategy as a professional was to learn those skills, and then bring those skills into the comic business and do that kind of work in fantasy publishing, basically.
This art, this is like, I know that you told me like that some of these characters actually have this art in their home. Some of the actors from the, I mean, because it's beautiful art. Give me a little bit of your background with Marvel Zombies. You were talking to me about it earlier, about what happens, what the appeal is with being a zombie if you had to be faced with, you know, having to slew a loved one as a result of it. I mean, give me a little bit, just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that has to do with also the last question that we were just talking about, which secondary education for me was, I had an uncle, Uncle John, who actually studied with Norman Rockwell, and I inherited his workbook. So in a way, I'm kind of second generation trained by Norman Rockwell. And the training I got from that course, it was like a 2-year course that I took. And Norman really, I think he was the best at teaching the psychology of putting an illustration together. Yeah, just basically that, how the psychology of of analyzing your own work and analyzing the job. You know, a publisher gives you a job. Here's what we want you to do. We want you to do a cover. Sometimes they make a suggestion for what they want, and sometimes they just leave it up to you. But how to get the best work out of yourself. And so it's like science, basically. It's like a science. That's you're doing science experiments with art materials, basically, with paint and pencils and pens and brushes. So for zombies, when the Marvel Zombie project came up, the challenge for me in looking at zombies was, as I said, I basically put the theory that I learned from Norman Rockwell to the task of working on the zombie genre, which was what's been done with zombies, and then what's been right about what's been done, and what's been wrong about what's been done. Because at the time in 2005, everybody hated zombies. Nobody liked zombies at all, and I understood that because I'd been seeing it my entire life. You know, the concept of zombies always appealed to me as a folklore. I was like, wow, that's a really cool concept, and somebody should be able to do something really good with zombies. and we saw a lot of things coming out, but that was all terrible. And so then the question for me as a Rockwell trained student, I should say, was, so what's wrong with all the zombie stuff, and why is the bad stuff so bad? And so what I figured out for myself was, the way I thought about it was that zombies were always kind of cold and gray, and that the people working on zombie projects, they were going for the gross out factor.
The death factor.
Yeah, rather than going for quality, rather than going for something that's classy. And I was thinking, whatever the genre is, that there should be a way to class it up, you know, to present it in a classical way. So then it's just a question of, so then how can that be done? What do you have to do in order to do that? So with zombies, the first thing I did was I decided, well, since traditionally they've been the color of a potato, and they've been going out for the gross out factor, we're going to eliminate the gross out factor, and I'm going to make them really colorful. So what I did was I took the kind of a color palette of the French Impressionism, so a very bright and colorful palette, and I brought that into the zombie universe. And the second thing that I thought was really wrong with zombies is they're all the same. Basically, it was all just a skull walking around with losing his hair, bad teeth, and they all looked the same, you know, and they all sounded the same, and they all walked the same. And so for Marvel Zombies, I said, hey, let's do the, you know, let's do this differently. Let's give each one his own personality, so every zombie is different. And one of the great things that the writer for Marvel Zombies did was, that I think really changed the whole thing, was each zombie maintained his personality. So before he passed away, you know, he had a B, C, D type personality, and when they went over to the other realm and became zombies, they maintained that. And so it was the first series that came out where zombies actually talked.
Oh, wow.
Stupid something like brains, which even when they said that earlier on, that was good. But to give them their own personality so they could have full conversations and argue about this whole zombie thing going on, that was a great thing. Yeah.
So now, knowing that I have all this, because I mean, this art is just beautiful. Where can we reach you? Where can we find out more about you? What your latest things are doing? What you're doing? You know, Facebook, Twitter.
Yeah, I don't have much time for social media, but the one that I do actually attend, and I actually put kind of drawing lessons up there, and if I come across things that I think are that maybe should be or could be significantly interesting to other artists, meaning people in any kind of art, actors, dancers, whatever they are, I hang it up on my Facebook page. And when I've got new work that I finished, like sketches that I do at these shows, sometimes I'll put a little drawing lesson up there for folks. I'll hang it up on my Facebook page, and that's at HarryArthurSuydam at Facebook.com. Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely wonderful. I mean, one of the discussions that we had prior to me sitting down with you is the fact that we don't have very many artists out there because people are so wrapped up in social media and everything. So we completely understand. But if you want to learn about this beautiful art, if you want to even be taught by this great master right here, I would suggest you check him out on his Facebook. And any other advice you want to give to anybody out there that's looking to do their thing artistically?
Yeah, put down the cell phone and do something. You should spend your time wisely in your life. Yeah, spend it wisely.
Good advice from a very wise man. Thank you, APPLETINIs, for watching us here at the New Jersey Comic Expo. See you soon.